everyone. For today's episode, I have with me a person that I know who's very well read. She's a professional in the field of education, and I have had the privilege of taking almost four courses from her. So, Miss Talat, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Miss, you are one of the most well-read person I know. I know that your library, your home library, consists of almost like 400 books, I'm guessing.
Uh, uh, Thank you for asking this question
Yeah.
because I must say that I have a kind of passion
Yeah.
for reading. I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
don't read it because I have to read it. I
Yeah.
read it because I enjoy doing so.
And like you've accumulated this collection over the years.
That's right.
Mm.
Books are like friends for me, and I've lost some of those friends. I had a very big collection, but somehow when I look for a certain book, and if I can't find it, then I feel sad because it's
Yeah.
like losing a friend.
No, because they're precious to you, so you feel that loss.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you told us in one of our classes that you gave out these books to some of the students and like you never got them back or something like that happened.
Uh, Friends and students both. And at least this gives me a kind of satisfaction that other people also love books, but this is how they get their,
Yeah.
share. I can understand.
Yeah. No, but still, like that doesn't make it right though. But I mean, yeah, at least you can be at content. You can be content with the fact that somebody out there is reading and enjoying those books of
Yes.
yours. So, Miss, tell me, how did you like start reading and how do you get into it? Like, was it something a hobby, uh, from like your childhood?
That's right. The schools I went to, they were, literally convincing young people, children, forcing them to read books. There was a very good school library. We used to go every week for an hour. We sat there, and after that, we took a book home. And sometimes, not always, sometimes our teachers used to discuss those books in class. They used to ask us, which book did you take last week? What did you get from it? So gradually, first children, maybe some children resent it, but I loved it from the beginning. And I think that's how I developed love of books.
That is exactly what happened with me as well. Like
Yes.
we used to have a particular period for that would be library period, and we would
Mm.
go to the library like our whole class, and we were allowed to read there, and then if we wanted to take that book or any other book back with
Mm.
us home, then we were allowed to, and it was like for a week we could borrow those books.
Yes,
Yeah.
for a week.
Yeah, and that is also how I got into reading and how and I remember I used to like finish all those books that I used to borrow like within a day or two.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have a good reading speed.
Yeah, and then I used to be bored like what else am I supposed to do now? I'm done with this. I need more books. So, Miss, like, of course, I know that you teach and you are doing research papers, like, you're working on a lot of papers, you consult with other teachers as well, other professors. So, how do you make time amongst all of that and doing all of that for reading? Not just for work wise or like for education
Mm.
purposes, for pleasure as well.
I think, you don't get time to read. You have to take out time to read. And these days, I must admit, most of my readings are related to my research projects. But these days, I'm not reading much of literature. I'm not reading things which are not directly related to my research work. But yes, I started off with literature, I started off with general knowledge books. But now, these days, especially for the last 6 months, I'm more into my
Mm.
research project.
What do they entail? Like, what are you reading for those?
Well, these days, I'm reading a book on CPEC. I
Mhm.
got it from the internet, I downloaded it.
Yeah, my favorite way to read books.
Yeah, but the books I'm reading, the non related research books that I'm reading, One is called Why Nations Fail. It's very interesting. It's very informative. The writers are Darren Asimoglu. I
Mhm.
don't know whether I'm
Yeah.
pronouncing it correctly, and
Okay.
James Robinson.
Okay.
This book was really an eye opener. It tells us how some nations become developed and their pace of development is faster,
Yeah.
whereas other nations
Take their time.
do, yes, and they don't gain prosperity, they don't gain development.
Mm.
It doesn't come very easily to them. So this book taught me that. And then I'm currently reading another book also, which is also interesting. This is called Why the West Rules for Now.
Oh.
And this is Ian Morris. Actually, he's put up a Morris theorem.
Oh, really?
Yes,
That's
but
interesting. Oh.
I wasn't convinced by Morris theorem.
Yeah.
But it teaches us to look at things in a different way. What he's trying to say is that there are three factors. Uh, the three factors are geography, sociology, and geography, sociology, and biology.
Oh.
Uh, all three work together, and that's how nations become developed,
Mm.
militarily powerful, prosperous, and then they dominate the world. Biologically, it was said that some people misuse this idea. They used to say that white race is more intelligent. You know, very racist type of
Yeah.
explanations. But if you look at history, you'll find that white racers have had their ups, they've also had their downs. There was a time when Muslim civilization was a dominant
Yeah.
civilization. There were so many scholars.
Yeah.
So that doesn't explain the phenomena. Then, does that sociology, how societies develop, what is the role of geography in it? So, from
Mm.
this point of view, it's interesting. I think what actually leads to prosperity, all these arguments so far I've not finished. Maybe in
Mm.
the end I might be convinced,
Mm.
but there are certain terminologies which this author has used, Morris, and he says, for example, for great people in history, he uses the term abnormal
Oh.
instead of using extraordinary. You know, they were
y-
great.
Yeah.
Naturally, they were not normal like us.
Yeah. He changed those
Yes,
connotation of the
his,
word, how it's
yeah,
perceived.
it
Yeah.
sounds a bit derogatory
Yeah.
to call a great person abnormal.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you define normal? Normal are people who are ordinary, average. They are extraordinary, I think.
Yeah.
So I differed with terminologies, but that always happens. When you read a book, you don't agree with everything.
No, of course you read to like get a gain on different perspectives and
Hmm.
what other people are thinking and what their take is on different areas and topics as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. You also told us in class that you are also reading currently a book called Neocons.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I'm reading to teach for my,
Okay. Yeah.
some of the books which I read are for my lectures.
Mm.
Some of the books are for the paper, research paper or book I'm working on. And some are just for information. For example, I came across a very interesting book. It's called Killing Hope, and it's written by William Blum. And I'm very lucky, I think, because I have a book signed by William Blum.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And, he's an ex CIA man.
Oh.
So he's written this book about CIA activities all over the world. And this is coming from horse's mouth. This is coming
Ye-
straight from a CIA
Yeah.
person. In this, what he has tried to say is that, there, I don't know, I think there are 40 cases which he's discussed. I found the one on Iran very informative. Iran, CIA intervention in 1953, Iraq, CIA intervention in 1991. CIA went to set the stage for the war against Iraq. So, there are so many cases from Central America, Latin America, Middle East,
yes.
Africa, Far East.
Also, I think South Asia as well.
South Asia, I was looking for South Asia.
There
They've
aren't?
not mentioned anything.
Oh, really?
That does
That's
not mean that
surprising.
CIA is not active here.
Not at all.
It just means that maybe we can look forward to another book on this subject.
I hope so. Do you think he received any sort of backlash from writing that book?
I don't know whether, I don't think action was taken against him because the cat was already out of the bag.
Yeah.
They would have liked to stop him before he wrote this book. But after he wrote it, taking action against him would have further exposed them. So I think they did not. He went to US universities. He signed these books. He launched his book. I think they played a clever game. They did not want to take action against him once he had already launched it. But I'm sure that they would have liked to stop the launching of this. It's really an eye-opener. He says that third world countries want to, achieve prosperity. They want to take policy initiatives, but the CIA stops them if those initiatives are not in US interest. Their criteria is whether a thing is going to harm the US or United States economic interests, and harm can be interpreted in any way. Anything that is going to reduce the economic dominance of United States can be counted as a harm, and people who are trying to take that step would be eliminated or thrown out of power. For example, it's come out, it's in the media now, that Gaddafi, when he was president of Libya, he wanted to start a new currency, an all-African currency. And he said that African countries should not use dollar in their trade.
I read that. Yeah.
So he lost power. And I have not read a book saying that CIA was active there, but after reading this book, I'm tuned to believe this.
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein wanted to replace the currency in the Middle East, have one currency for Middle East, and he wanted it to be gold-based, not dollar-based.
Yeah.
He's gone out of power. So he says that whenever there is some hope
and something that doesn't really align with US policies,
yes, then it doesn't work out in most cases. In some cases, it might still work out.
Yeah. So, Miss, like you said that sometimes you read for lectures, for preparing them, and for research, and sometimes just for your own information and pleasure. Do you think there's a difference in you reading books, like when you're reading them for lectures and when you're reading them for research, compared with when you're reading for your own enjoyment?
Actually, now I enjoy all my readings, even the ones I do for my lectures, even the ones I'm doing for my research. I'm enjoying all of it. I think that they're right when they say that books are your best friend. They are. You don't feel, even if you are alone in the house, you don't feel alone. You feel that, you're very much in the middle of company.
Yeah. So, was non-fiction always something that you gravitated towards, or did you start with reading fiction as well, or do you still do?
Now I don't get too much time to read fiction or literature, but when I was in school, Jane Eyre and almost all the classics. I read Charles
Mm.
Dickens
Yes.
with a lot of care, and we used to enjoy it. Actually, in our school, they had a very good system. People who topped, there were four sections, three, four sections. And if a person topped in all the three, four sections, they used to give them a gift. And the gifts were always in the form of books. So once I topped in those three sections in English, once in Urdu, and every time I got a very good book. I got Tale of Two Cities. I got another book in Urdu. It was called Kuch Afsane. And it was not actually Afsane, it was about important places in Pakistan. And they traced their history also. How did the city come into being? The historical stages the city passed through. I enjoyed reading it.
That's actually such a nice way to encourage reading by giving kids presents and encouraging
Exactly.
them to perform as well and to make them
Mhm.
read as well at the same time.
I think I had a kind of interest in languages. I also topped in Arabic language,
Mm.
but I studied Arabic for 3 years. But this used to stress grammar
Mm.
and those kind of things. Uh, I wish I can do another course where spoken Arabic is the main
I've
focus.
studied Arabic as well, I think from 6th grade to like 8th grade. Yeah, I did.
It was the same with me,
Yeah.
6 to 8.
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
remember any of it though. I don't know what I
Because with
studied.
grammar and all that,
Yeah.
unless you continue with it, but
Mhm.
spoken Arabic is different. I
Yeah.
used to get so many students when I was teaching in KU. We had so many students from Arab countries, and they used to say, "Come on, you told us you studied Arabic, speak in Arabic with us." And then I had to admit that I can't speak.
So, Miss, is there like a particular genre or a type of synopsis that you're more inclined towards reading, or when you like look for when you're picking a new book and or starting a new book?
And now it revolves around world politics, international relations, and I'm also very fond of Noam Chomsky's works.
Yeah, I just picked up one of his books. Yeah,
Yes, that
yeah.
was really, very interesting to see a young person
Yeah.
interested in Chomsky's works. I also have a set of his books. And so, although that's not related to my teaching, that's not related to research,
Mm,
which I'm doing these days, but I can't resist
mm,
Chomsky.
yeah. Any particular of his works that you really enjoyed?
Actually, there's so many of them, I don't know which one to pick out as my favorite.
Yeah.
They're all my favorites.
Mm, yeah.
And I would like to tell you two more books which are my favorite.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you
Uh,
that. Yeah.
One is written by Leila Khalid,
Mhm.
and the title is My People Shall Live. In this book, she's tried to explain how she became a freedom fighter.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and because Arab society is generally, a bit traditional.
Yes.
And when this lady wanted to join the movement, her mother said, "Look, there are so many Palestinian boys. They'll join the movement. You can sit at home."
Mm.
And she said that why should we put all the burden on boys? Why can't girls? We are also Palestinians. It's our
Yeah.
responsibility too to liberate Palestine. And that was the first book I got. This was presented by an Arab friend. Uh, then, when I went on an excursion, I go and search bookstalls. So when I saw this lady's book, Ghada Karmi, I've met her also. She's a medical doctor. She's Palestinian. Now she's a British citizen, but she went back to Palestine to look for her, the lady who used to look after her in her childhood.
Yeah, that's another book that you told me about, In
Yes,
Search of Fatma.
In Search of Fatma, yes. And that book also tells us a lot about, what is happening in occupied Palestine, also called Israel.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed these two books very much.
Yeah, they were like very sentimental and a private, no kind of a story, very
Hmm.
close to the author's heart.
And because my area of specialization is also Middle East,
Mm.
so I
Yeah.
invited Ghada Karmi to address my students. Actually, when I talked about it, everyone in the university wanted to attend that. We didn't have enough space in my class. So
Mm.
we had it in the auditorium of Karachi University, which can take 500 people. But there were more than 500 people. Some were sitting on the
Oh, yeah,
stairs,
yeah.
some were standing at the, and I think she really enjoyed attending them.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can see how many people were appreciative of her coming and talking to them.
Yes. And the
Mm.
person who put me in touch with her was Zubedah Mustafa. She was an ex student of IR department in Karachi University. Then she worked for Dawn for a very long time. She's retired now, but she's a very active person. Uh, I really admire her courage, her determination. She's everywhere, mashallah, where they are discussing Middle East.
Oh, wow, that's really nice. Miss, you also, we recently in this podcast only, you told us that you have a book signed by William, the author.
Blum,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you get in? How do you get your hands on that?
Actually, what happened was that I used to be invited to a lot of TV programs. So I went to one of them, and there was a Pakistani doctor. I've uh, His name was, I think, Zulfikar Ahmed, or I don't remember the full name, but he saw one of my programs, and he learned that I'm from Karachi University. So 3 4 days after that, I received a parcel and a letter in it. I've kept the letter also. It said you talked about some things, and I want to tell you more cases of that kind. He got that book signed by William Blum, and it was very, I think, heroic of him to pass that book on to me.
Yeah.
He said, read this. This is what can happen in Pakistan also. So when I read that, and I'm very grateful to him for providing that book.
And that's
It's
so
full of
special.
knowledge.
That's so special of
Yes,
someone to actually give someone something that means so much to them and they can relate to.
exactly. He's a
Yeah.
Pakistani doctor
Mm.
working in United States. He's equally interested in politics and history.
So, Miss, like, right now, not a lot of people, especially young, like my age or maybe young teenagers, us millennials, as we say, we're not really, we're like moving forth from more reading books and like we're more into watching shows and everything and more with social media. So, what advice would you give us, or like something that would make us go back to reading and would make us interested in that?
I,
Yes, sure. We can cut it and then we can do it again now. बीच में से
this is from Radio Pakistan for my interview, I think, on Kashmir.
Oh, okay.
I've
Yeah.
given many, so
Yeah.
um, I think that I value this thing. Why can't they understand that I'm not free? We'll wait for a few minutes. I
Yeah.
hope they don't call back again.
Yeah. It's just like two more questions, maybe. Just that's it.
Uh, I value one thing, that people want to learn, young people want to learn, but they mostly go to sources like Wikipedia, other sources. When I see their research papers, they quote all these. The only problem with these sources is that they are not there, the authenticity is missing. The material may be good or bad, but the thing is that there is no quality control. So even good matter, good substance does not get the same amount of importance. Whereas when you write a book, it goes through at least two experts. They check that, and if they think that it's worth it, then they advise the publishers to publish it. Those books which are published without this procedure are not counted as good sources of information. Quality control, chances are that there's going to be more quality control when a book is published, though not always. I told you that there are people, publishers, who just publish the book if you give them some money. But those books will not be valued much. If a book goes through this scrutiny, then that book will be valuable. And there is no system of scrutiny, of scrutinizing things on social media, these sources. So I would recommend that books should be given more importance. Although this is a technological, revolution, and the sources which are available, read them when you want. But I think students should give more importance to books, especially high quality books. There are certain publishers who are known. I will not do any, advertising for anyone, but there are publishers who enjoy good reputation. One more thing, which I have read many books which were very, very ordinary. I've read books which were prejudiced, which were not written with an open mind. So when you read that kind of thing, you do realize, and you can leave it in the middle if you don't like it. But I think reading habit is good. If you form that habit, it'll be with you throughout your life.
That's very true. Yeah. So, Miss, any book suggestion that you have for me and for the audience?
In fact, I would say that you should read My People Shall Live. It's out of print now. You can borrow my book.
Okay.
You should read In Search of Fatma. You should read these books which I talked about earlier on. And then I don't know your own interests. Some of you might be interested in psychology, some of you might be interested in history. So, and I think Noam Chomsky. There's a very interesting thing. Americans used to send a lot of scholars here, and they never sent Noam Chomsky. Surprisingly, they sent scholars who spoke their language, who gave a very favorable picture about the US, but because Chomsky is very critical, so they never sent Chomsky. But I don't know who did this favor to our country, our students. They invited Chomsky, and Chomsky delivered many lectures at various, fora. And I heard one of them. I was lucky to get information, and I went there. But there used to be, a crowd standing there, and it was very difficult to gain entrance. But read Chomsky when you get him.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And with that, we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much, Miss, for giving us your time. It was an honor having you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Maha. I really enjoyed being with you all. Yeah. The questions were superb.
Thank you.
They reminded me of many things which I have forgotten over the years, but they all came back to me. Thank you.
Of course, Miss. You're welcome. I hope you all had fun listening to this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.